Hello! So as you can see from the title, this is going to be my what I read in March video. And I realize that it's really late, but whatever. And yeah, not gonna lie, at this point I kind of forgot those summaries of these books, and I'm bad enough at giving summaries as is, so this might be a flop, but kind of the definition of my life, so let's go. So the first book I read in March was Tokyo Ghoul by Stuart Ishida. So basically it's this manga that takes place in a world where these things called ghouls, and ghouls look just like humans except they eat people, and they're largely considered monsters by the general population. The main character is Ken Kanaki, who's this college student, and one day he goes on a date, but this terrible accident happens and he wakes up and he finds himself half ghoul. So this part of the story is him getting accustomed to his new life as a half ghoul and trying to decide between the human and ghoul part of himself. So I thought this manga was actually pretty good. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and there's one chapter, the second half of chapter 8 was amazing, top tier, good shit, and dead ass, I'm not even kidding, it like almost actually made me cry because it was just like, it was that good. For the most part, the manga is like pretty good. I would say it's just like average, but that second half of chapter 8 was amazing. I would say if you're not a fan of violence, you might not like this manga. There is a bit of like, I would consider edgy violence in it. Like, there's one part where someone's head literally gets kicked off. So if you're not a fan of that, I would skip this. But if you're okay with like some kind of, I guess, rated R level violence, then you might be okay with this. Me personally, I don't want to say I like the violence, but I like that it was kind of shocking and it just kind of makes you go like, oh my god. It definitely reminded me of like, if you've seen Jessica Jones, the TV show, it would be like that, kind of like shocking violence to just like get a rise out of you, but not like unnecessary level violence, I would say. I mean, it's kind of unnecessary, but if you kind of enjoy it, then I think you would like it. This is like typical of manga and anime, I'd say, but there was like some sexualization and objectification of women that I wasn't really a fan of. Like, just some unnecessary like boob shots and stuff, but I don't know. It wasn't that excessive, but it definitely wasn't necessary, so I was kind of like, bruh. But other than that, above all, a pretty interesting manga, and I might go and watch the anime. My phone just fell, so you might see a slight shift in camera angle or whatever, but yeah. Okay, so the next book I read was Wicked Fox by Kat Cho. So the main character is Mi-young, who is a gumiho, also known as a nine-tailed fox, and gumihos have to feed off the life force of men to survive. And one day she encounters Ji-hoon, who's a human boy, and he's being attacked by a goblin. So she decides to save him, but in the process she loses her fox speed, which is basically her gumiho soul. But eventually Mi-young and Ji-hoon become friends, and eventually they form a relationship, and this young shaman tries to reunite Mi-young with her fox speed, but it goes wrong and shit happens. So basically now she has to choose between her gumiho life and Ji-hoon's life. So I gave this book 3 stars. I enjoyed the friendship aspect of it. I love seeing Mi-young and Ji-hoon interact with each other and their other friends, and I thought that aspect was really nice. And I love Ji-hoon, he's my fave. He's just really dorky and cute, and I think this is the first YA book I've read that takes place in Asia. It takes place in Korea, and it was really cool to see Korean culture and just the general atmosphere of the country. I thought that was really nice. Yeah, those are the things I liked about the book, but I also think there were some aspects that were kind of weak. I think the world building could have used some work, at least on the fantastical side, because there are gumihos and goblins in this book, but nothing else. First of all, it's kind of a weird combination, if I'm being honest. Like, above all things, it's nine-tailed foxes and goblins, kind of random. I think the author only included what was directly necessary for the sake of the book, so I think it would have been more interesting if she expanded it to a bunch of fantastical creatures or just focused on gumihos. So the other thing, I liked how Mi-young's relationship with her mother was a big contributor to Mi-young's problems forming relationships with other people, because her mother was never affectionate to her, and if we're being honest, is actually just abusive. But I thought it was interesting how that translated to Mi-young not being able to form relationships with other people very well and not being really close to anyone, and seeing the growth of her character throughout the story and finally getting friends and that sort of thing. But I thought the resolution of her relationship with her mother was done kind of badly, because in the end the abusive way that her mother treated her was kind of brushed off as everything she did was for you and that she loved her all along. And meanwhile, her mother not telling her anything was kind of the biggest reason for all the problems they were having. So, in conclusion, the book is kind of interesting, but not as deep as I would have liked. Also kind of glorifying abuse, but Ji-hoon is my fave. Okay, so the next book I'm talking about is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. Hi. So for the original clip of this, the video and audio got out of sync for some reason, so I'm just gonna re-record it. So forgive me if my enthusiasm does not show through as it did in the first clip. So the next book I read was The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton, and this book was really fucking good. So I randomly saw this on my Goodreads and decided to just check it out and read it without looking at the synopsis, and so I had no idea what was going on, and honestly I think that is the preferred method because the main character starts out the story not knowing what's going on either. He wakes up in the middle of the forest with amnesia, he doesn't remember what happened, he doesn't remember his own name, and I was like, I'm into that, because I too do not know who I am, and it was actually a pretty fun time, because you spend the first few chapters not knowing anything that's going on, and you get to figure things out along with the main character. So I highly recommend starting out the book this way, not looking at the synopsis, and if you would like to just go off my opinion that this book is really good and just jump into it, I highly recommend that. So I'll leave some timestamps up so you can skip past both the summary and also my review if you want. But if you want to know a little bit more about what's going on, keep watching. So, onto the synopsis. Basically, this guy, the main character, repeats the same day over and over again, but each day he wakes up in a different body. So in order to escape this time loop, he has to figure out who murdered Evelyn Hardcastle. But there's also 2 other people trapped there with him, and they'll stop at nothing to escape, including murder. So, onto my review. I gave it 5 stars, as you might have expected. It was so good. It was just absolutely mind-blowing. It's really whack and complicated and all over the place, with a bunch of twists and turns. It doubles back, it loops around, as you might expect from the time loop. And if you've seen The Good Place, it's literally Jeremy Bearimy. There's a lot of time travel stories where you'll see something that you don't understand at first, but then you'll see it again from a different perspective and suddenly everything makes sense. And that happens a lot in this story. And I guess I just really like that kind of aspect to the story, so it was something I really enjoyed. And Turton, the author, did a really good job of keeping track of everything, and so by the end, when you figure everything out, everything makes sense. I highly recommend keeping some brief notes on the characters, because sometimes you'll see someone and then you won't see them again for a while, and there were definitely a few times where that happened, and then I was like, I literally do not know who this person is. So if you just keep some brief notes, it'll help you keep track of the story, and so you won't be confused, and it'll help you enjoy the story better. Yeah, so like this book definitely requires 110% of your concentration because it moves around a lot and can be confusing, but if you keep track of what's going on, you'll be fine. And part of what I really enjoyed about this book was that I never seemed to know what was going on, and that made me want to know more. Another thing that was good about this book was the writing style, because usually I don't really notice the writing style unless it's really bad, but in this case there were a few times where I was like, I like that metaphor. So it's really clear with the good writing style and complicated plot that Turton is a really good writer. I don't think it's problematic of the book or the author per se, considering the setting, which I think is like 20s or something, and the character who said it, but when I read it, I was just like, bruh, so I think I have to point it out. Like, basically, there's this one point where this character is like talking about something, and then he refers to Asia as the Orient, and literally says Orientals. Literally, I was just like, you gotta be kidding me right now. So, I just want to point that out, like, it's not even an important part of the story, but I literally had to stop. I'm triggered, okay? I don't want that to taint your idea of the story, because it really is really good, and that part is like super minimal, but yeah, in conclusion, go read it. It's so good. It will blow your mind. Yeah, just go read it. Once again, my phone falls when I try to pause the video, because my tripod is literally just my water bottle, because we're living in janky hours. Okay, so the last book I read in March was Girl Made of Stars by Ashley Herring Blake. So just a preface, this book is about sexual assault, so definitely trigger warnings for that. And I will be talking about that as part of the summary because that is the main point of the book. So basically this book is about a girl named Mar and her friends, including her twin brother Owen and her friend Hannah. So basically one day her friend group goes to this party, and the next day Mar finds out Owen raped Hannah. And basically this is a battle between her instinct to believe her friend and her natural disbelief that her brother would do something like this. And meanwhile, she's trying to work through some difficulties with her best friend slash ex-girlfriend, Charlie, who she's just broken up with, and also trying to handle something from her past that unfortunately is very similar to what's going on with Hannah. So I gave this book 4 stars, which I'm honestly very mixed about, because there's one part of this book that's really good, but then one part that's really bad. So let's start with the bad. The first 20 to 30% of this book kind of sucked, in my opinion. It was around like 2 stars for me. I think this mostly stems from the fact that the book is way more immature than I expected, because Mara's a senior in high school, but it read more like late middle school, early high school. So it was definitely YA and not young adult. So the voice was definitely more immature, and there were definitely elements that I wasn't a big fan of that are common in YA, like cringy teen speak and like mean girl bullshit. But because this book is from Mara's perspective, it makes her sound really immature and annoying, and both in her narration and actions. But luckily that kind of stopped as we got deeper into the book, which is why I probably didn't dislike it as much by the end. But for sure, it was very obviously aimed at a younger audience, which I think can also be good to expose younger people to this topic. But I think there's also a way to make things accessible to a younger audience without making the characters seem immature, I think. Because it wasn't just like the voice, it was just how Mara was as a character, especially early on, that really annoyed me. So I think there could have been some tweaking on the author's part. So there are just some aspects that make Mara seem very immature. For example, she describes fuck as the F word, and I was just like, is this 3rd grade? Like, come on. She's literally a senior in high school. Like, every teenager I know swears so much. I guarantee you no senior refers to fuck as the F word. Okay, so you find out in the beginning of the book that Mara broke up with Charlie, who was her best friend and now ex-girlfriend, but for some reason she's confused as to why Charlie is ignoring her texts, and I'm like, maybe it's because you just dumped her, like, just give her some space for a little bit. But later when she goes to the party, she sees Charlie with another girl and gets upsetty spaghetti. And afterwards, when she finds out what happened to Hannah and the fact that Charlie and that other girl was there to help her, she's more upset by the fact that the other girl was there and not her than the fact that her friend just got attacked, which I was just like, come on. And that other girl, Tess, is literally just put in to make Mara jealous. I thought Mara and us as the reader was gonna get to know her more and actually see her as another human being, but her character doesn't really make another appearance, so yeah, she's literally put in to just make Mara jealous, and I thought that was kind of lame. So there's that fake nice, faux sweet, mean girl bullshit that I just find so annoying. It's just unnecessary, it's annoying, and so infuriating. Like, and it pissed me the hell off every time I read the word incoherently. Like, of course they get friendly at the end, which always happens in these kind of things, but I just thought it was stupid that it was happening in the first place. Like, the fake sweet stuff was just so middle school. It's not even high school, it's just middle school, okay? It's just no. Like, we didn't need that. And then the last thing is just like the weird instances of teen speak, like crafting emoji, which is crying laughing emoji, I guess, and a character literally says no big at one point, which apparently is short for no big deal. And I'm just literally in my notes I wrote my thoughts on this. Yeah, I have nothing to say about that. Like, I just don't. So now that I've completely roasted the shit out of this book and probably discouraged anyone from reading it, let's talk about the things I like. So, I mean, okay, if we get past the first 20 to 30%, the book actually gets quite good. Like, Mara stops being annoying, I think. And then we actually start to get into the main topic of the story, which is, of course, sexual assault. But I think the author handled it really well. She did a good job of making it realistic in the sense of the nuances of the situation and how different people would react differently and not necessarily always react in the right way, because obviously it's a traumatic situation that affects many people. Yeah, the story was very emotional and raw and heart-wrenching. And there's this one scene between Alex, who's Owen's best friend, and Mara that was amazing. Juxtaposed in direct opposition with Owen, I would say it was cathartic. This probably doesn't really make much sense. I guess you could say in a way it was like a wrong being righted, which obviously can't really happen in this kind of situation, but yeah, I really don't know how else to say it. And as for representation, Mara is bi, Charlie likes girls and is genderqueer and also questioning possibly being non-binary, and Alex is Korean. And this is definitely a good example of a diverse story that's definitely not just trying to get token characters. These characters are definitely nuanced people and not just put in for the sake of representation. Yeah, so if you want to read a book that talks about sexual assault and does a good job of it, I definitely recommend reading this book. Yeah, so if you're okay with reading a book that might be intended for younger audience and be a bit immature, then it probably won't be a problem for you. Because of that, I gave it 4 stars because I definitely think that aspect balances out the more annoying aspects of the earlier parts of the book. So yeah. Okay, so after reading these books, I noticed a pattern. My favorite character from Wicked Fox was Ji-hoon, and from Girl Made of Stars was Alex. And I was like, why is that? And then I realized it's because they were both dorky and cute. And then I realized I have a thing for dorky boys. Yeah, okay, anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed hearing me badly talk about books for like, I don't know, how long is this video? 10 minutes? Anyway, thanks for watching, and I have a very interesting video for you next time, so keep an eye out for that one. Okay, thanks for watching. I said that like 5 times. Goodbye.